Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be playing with neons and collage and mark making. So this is a technique I use a lot in my journals, and I suppose for those of you who've followed me for a while will know, will have seen me do this. So I thought for this video, while I'll explain what I'm doing, I'll explain also why I do this. In this particular video, instead of using acrylic paints like I usually do, I am using the Jane Davenport layer cakes. This is the neon set. I can't remember what it's called. I really enjoy using them. They are a water soluble product. They're a bit like a gouache. They're slightly more opaque than normal watercolors, but obviously neon colors tend to be translucent anyway, so these ones are fairly see-through. But you can see you get beautiful coverage of them really easily, and quite like acrylics, you can see they go over the top of each other. So for this page I'm using the same technique I do in a lot of these. I am starting out with a layer of colour. I tend to put it in 3 places on my page. I am then going in with paint over the top with a paintbrush and just using my paintbrush to make marks. I am making the marks random and spreading them out across the page. I'm not keeping them in one particular section. I am spreading it across the page, so it leads my eye across the page, and I am overlapping my marks. When I finish that, I will probably go in with some paint pen and maybe some stamping to add some detail. So it's just layers on top of layers on top of layers. All of the marks I'm making are really simple. They're dashes with the paint, they are lines, they're circles, they're not difficult shapes to make or draw. Just practice, and I find putting them in 2 or 3 places on my page, usually 3 to create those visual triangles, helps me create a bit of balance. So I suppose the reason why I do all this is because in my head, this is my go-to technique when I'm in a rut, when I am not sure what I want to do, when I need to just go and paint, when I need to turn off my brain. This is what I do. And some people go, but how can you turn off your brain? Because you have to think about all of this. But for me, I don't. Because I've got those little established rules. When I put the first layer of paint down, if I've got a colour on my brush, I'm going to put it 3 places on my page. That's it. Doesn't matter where I put it on the page as long as it's there 3 times. Once I've done that, I'm going to use my paintbrush to do a mark on the page. If I'm making a mark, I'm going to make that mark 3 places on the page. You know, I don't have to think about the mark because I'm just using my paintbrush to make that mark. So that's taken away a layer of thinking. For me, I suppose doing a page like this takes away my decision making, which I really appreciate. I know for a lot of you are out there, probably mums, and have to do a lot of decision making. I know teachers in particular, and I'm sure in a lot of other professions as well, but get something called decision fatigue, because we're making decisions every minute of every day. You know, you're sitting in the classroom, what do I need to do next? This student's doing this, what do I need to do for that student? If I do this, that student's going to do that. So there's all of this decision making going on. And when I come home, I honestly find it really difficult to make any more decisions. I'm done for the day. So when it gets time to come into my studio, because I tend obviously look after my kids, put them to bed and so on. So by the time I get into the studio, it is about 8:30, 9, sometimes 10 o'clock at night before I get in there. So whatever I do needs to be quick. I need to not think about it. I just need to switch off. And that's the reason why I do stuff like this, because I've got those, I call them rules. They're not rules at all, but in my brain they are. It's just like, if you've got paint, you're going to put it in 3 places. Done. Doesn't matter what color it is, it's just going to go in 3 places. If you've got a paintbrush, make a mark. Done. If you've made that mark, you're going to make it in 2 other places. Done. So it makes it really quick and easy. So the other reason I tend to use acrylic paints to do this is because it's not water reactive. So once the acrylic paint is dry, I can overlay colors without having to think about it. So I don't have to think about color theory and knowing that, well, if I put my purple, an orange over a purple, or purple over orange, I'm going to get a yucky brown color. because it's still wet and it's going to bleed together. The fact that it is dry means I can put a purple over an orange or an orange over a purple, and it's not going to make a difference. I can put a light yellow over a dark blue and not make a green because they're dry. It's not going to react with each other. This, the layer cakes that I've just used in the background here are those in-betweeny type goes, because they are water reactive, but because they are actually quite thick and creamy, once they're dry, unless I'm putting a huge amount of paint over the top, they don't react too much. So you saw with the mark making, I was fairly quick, it was fairly creamy, it was fairly dry brush, it wasn't too wet, so I was able to make those marks over the top pretty easily. Obviously with acrylic that's less of a worry, but for example, if I tried to do this technique with watercolour, it would be a lot more difficult to do. So just be aware of it, and that's one of the reasons why I use those acrylics and the less water reactive products when I'm working, because it takes a level of thinking away from me. I don't necessarily have to think about my colour theory too much. I suppose one of the benefits for me is because I have been doing this for so long, I have go-to colour combinations that I really enjoy working with, that I don't have to think about very much. So that helps. And if you are doing lots of art journaling, or if you're good at swatching, I'm not, but you might have a little book of go-to colours that when you're having days where you don't want to think, that you could maybe just grab and go, okay, I'm just going to do this colour today. So that's my theory on the backgrounds and mark making. Collage for me is a bit like that as well. So I don't have to think too much about collage either when it comes to sort of magazine collage. But what I've done recently is I have gone through when I've been on holiday, or I've been having a bit of a slump where I haven't actually been going into my studio too much. So what I have done, if I'm sitting at the TV watching something, I'll bring a whole heap of magazines and just cut out around them while I'm watching something on TV. So I've got a little folder next to my chair that if I'm doing a page like this and I've got a background, that I can pull out an image. This one's a fairly simple one because I didn't add anything to it, I just did a little bit of outlining around it, and I can chuck it into my journal to have a finished page. There's nothing special about this page, it's not brilliant, but it's done and it got me out of my head this night, so it did its job. I quite like the background I had to say. The image itself doesn't do much for me, but the background's quite cheerful and bright, which I don't mind. As with the quotes and so on, usually by the time I have done all the backgrounds and I've stuck on a piece of collage, my brain is actually at a stage that I can actually think about, oh, what would I like to write on this page? Or there's enough happening that I can sort of pick up a keyword or two that I can go into Pinterest or Google and search for something. So while I was looking at this image, the fact that she's sort of tending to her plants, which is something I do not do, but it talked to me a bit about passion, and the fact that I'm passionate about getting into my art studio and doing a bit of mark making. That was the keyword that I wanted to jump on. So I went into Pinterest, looked up passion quotes, and came up with this quote: passion is energy, feeling the power that comes from what excites you. And I really liked that. The background was kind of exciting and had a bit of energy, so I felt it sort of all flowed together. So I wrote it out on my page, and you'll notice that I've written over my image as well. I don't mind that, particularly with this image I wasn't necessarily so enamoured with, so the fact that the quote for me spoke more to what I was doing than the image, I was happy to write over it. But you can see how sort of bright and happy and cheerful it was. So that's why I art journal, that's how I get out of my head. So if you're stuck in a rut or you're finding it difficult, you might like to have a go at something like this, or come up with your own little rules that, when you're doing something, this is what I'm going to do, and see if that helps you. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.